Hello, I'm going to be going over inclusive language and its use in French in particular. So, how is inclusive language used in French? There are quite a few ways that native speakers have started to develop forms of inclusive language in French, and these are the ways that I have personally heard or read of online. So, and these are not in any particular order. Neutral pronouns. Il, for all of those il and il, or il and il, instead of il, elle, et elle. And that is just a gender neutral form, because il is masculine, elle is feminine. And then instead of lui, elle, and elle, it has become common to use either il, elle, or elle, lui, and elle. And then double inflection, this is much more common. You will hear this sometimes in professional environments or in government speeches. You will hear citoyenne et citoyen. Bonjour à toutes et à tous. And in this case, double inflection, the feminine comes first. For some people, they put the feminine first as a way to highlight the feminine and to bring the feminine form to the forefront, because typically the feminine is overshadowed by the masculine, with the masculine being the default and the neutral, or as close to neutral as is possible in French. And then for others, it is because of this rule that is called the accordance to proximity, where the gender of any adjectives and anything that will follow whenever you have two subject nouns will be based on the second one. So by putting the masculine second, all the following ones will still be masculine, which sounds more typical just because the masculine is typically used as the default option. And then neutral terms being used instead of gendered ones, so parent instead of mère and père, personne instead of homme and femme, droit humain instead of droit de l'homme. And then inclusive spelling, this is where there are more issues that people have, and I will get into that later. But mes amis, which that works because that pronunciation is the same, masculine, feminine, plural, all of them. And then there's issues with les acteurs, les actrices. That one doesn't really flow well. It's much more difficult to read. Les citoyens, les citoyennes, tous, toutes, and I've even heard toutiques, tous. Those forms are much less common and are typically only used in writing. And then there's the feminization of words that were formerly exclusively masculine. So la présidente as the feminine form of le président, la professeure or la professeuse instead of le professeur, la ministre instead of le ministre, la docteur, la docteuse, la doctoresse, which is much more common in Swiss French, not really anywhere else, or la doctrice. The last two are much more rare and uncommon, but it just shows that inclusive language has been in development for a long time in French. This is not something new. These are not just brand new things that someone has decided to do on a whim. And then arguments for inclusive language in French. This is a quote and also the name of her book by Eliane Viennot. Non, le masculin ne l'emporte pas sur le féminin. And that says, no, the masculine does not overtake the feminine. And that is based off of a rule that some people are taught, le masculin l'emporte sur le féminin, which is to say that if you have a group, the masculine, if there is one masculine thing in it, then the entire group becomes masculine. So inclusive language is used as a way to represent all people, men, women, non-binary individuals, and other individuals who do not identify with male or female. And then inclusive language has become a very prominent feminist topic in France in particular, as it seeks to fight against the idea of masculine and men being the default in society. And then some arguments have also been made that inclusive language can make more sense than the default of masculine overtaking everything. For example, if I have 19 étudiantes and 1 étudiant, Why should the entire group be referred to as étudiant instead of étudiante? Whenever it's only 1 versus 19, the number-wise, it would make sense that the group should be feminine instead. And then arguments against inclusive language. Some people believe that inclusive language in spelling is ungrammatical. Since the masculine in French is unmarked and the feminine is marked by an E, they state that the masculine is also the neutral, or the neuter, because it is unmarked. And then opponents to inclusive language argue that there is no connection between the existence of feminine terms in language and the conditions of women in society, which is to basically argue that doing all of these changes is not going to improve the livelihood of real women in the world. It's just kind of something that we're fighting over for no reason. And then many inclusive spelling options can be difficult to read and understand, particularly for second language learners. As we saw with the acteur, actrice, you can't really read that term as one word, and it makes it much more confusing to read. And the same inclusive spelling can make reading less accessible for individuals with disabilities. Screen readers and other accessibility tools can struggle whenever it comes across a block with particularly the median dots in between them. And then some people say that inclusive language creates more division in language and in culture, especially between different cultural groups and different generations. And then connotations, like I kind of mentioned before, inclusive language is still often associated more with the leftist political leanings. Double inflection is considered a stylistic choice, and it is not likely to really be marked either way politically, but feminists and LGBTQ rights organizations and supporters are more likely to use inclusive language styles in French than other groups. And I think it's important for students to be able to recognize these forms and their meanings, but I would recommend avoid using them for learners until they have a good grasp of standard grammar rules, because some of these forms may not even be recognized by all speakers, and I think it is more valuable to be able to learn to speak coherently and correctly in the way that will be understood by the majority of speakers. And these are some of the sources that I used in this, and thank you.